Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com.
Hey now, today we're going to take a look at Blood Rage from Cool Mini or Not and designer Eric Lang, who is on fire lately as far as designs. Now, Blood Rage has been hotly anticipated for quite some time, and it was in a weird place because there was a very limited quantity of them at Gen Con, far ahead of when the Kickstarter backers like myself actually received the games, so buzz has been building up for some time. Even though it has not been widely available, there are a lot of people who gave their reviews and their initial thoughts and things like that. What this is a Viking-themed game, and in the middle of Ragnarok. The world is literally crumbling around all of these different Viking clans, but they have one last shot at glory by taking over different provinces out on the board and trying to get glory by dominating those and by taking the rewards and the spoils from them as they pillage, but also dying in glorious battle and taking some of the other Vikings with them. You can get monsters and upgrades and spells and things like that. It is an area control game with really cool miniatures and battle and combat and card play. There's quite a bit to this game. Let me go ahead and give you a hopefully brief look at how the game is played. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. Alright, I'm going to give you a very brief run through of Blood Rage. This is a competitive game for 2 to 4 players. There is a separate extension you can buy for the game eventually that will allow you to play with up to 5 players, but for now it only goes up to 4. The goal of the game is to have the most glory. You have this tracker around the edges of the board, and you have little trackers for the different player colors, the different clans that you'll keep on 0 at the beginning. You'll be moving these along as you gain points during the course of the game, and the game is going to last for 3 ages. You're going to keep track of the ages over here on this board. Notice there's a lot of different stuff going on here, which we'll get to in a moment, but you move through the first age, the second age, and the third age. At the end of that third age, you are going to have your final scoring for the game, and whoever has the most glory is going to be the winner of the game. Now, the general gist of the game is that Ragnarok is going on and different areas of the board are going to be destroyed. They're going to be destroyed from age to age to age. And you need to be taking control of different areas and trying to get points through different means, through battle, through raising the stats of your clan, through a variety of different cards and special effects, and even sometimes getting your warriors killed on purpose. All of these different things and much more can get you glory during the course of the game. First off, let's go back to the age track over here, and I'm just going to give you the general gist of how the game is going to work. Now, notice that there are 3 stacks of cards, one for each age, with the corresponding number and color on the back. That phase of the game is called the God's Gifts phase. At the beginning of every age, you are actually going to draft those cards. You're not going to use every card for every game. Depending on the number of players, you're going to take some out. But what you'll do is shuffle up the cards for the age that you're in. It's the very first thing that you do. Deal 8 out to each player, and then you're going to draft them, meaning that you take 1 card from your hand of 8, put it down in front of you onto your player board, pass the remaining 7 cards to the player to your left, and keep going like that until you have drafted 6 cards, at which point you have 2 cards left in hand, and you are just going to discard those. That's it. You don't do anything with the last 2. Once you get done with the draft, then you go into the action phase. 1 player in each age is going to be the first player, and that's going to pass clockwise each round. They're going to take this first player marker. And when you're the first player, you're going to take 1 action, then it's going to go to the next player. They will take an action, and so on and so forth, until every player has either run out of rage or they pass, which also has the same effect of losing all of your rage being your currency in the game. We're going to get to all that. I'm just giving you the brief overview. Then you're going to move this saga token to the discards phase, which is simply you discard down to 1 card if you had more than 1 card remaining at the end of the action phase. You only get to carry 1 over, if any, to the next phase. Next, you go to questing. There are going to be quest cards in the game. You will score your quest cards now if you are able to score them. Then it is time for Ragnarok. Ragnarok is when areas of the board are going to be destroyed. At the beginning of the game, you're going to shuffle up this stack of tokens. Each one corresponds to a different province out on the board. When you get to this part of the age, whatever that area of the board is, you are going to take that token and you are going to physically destroy it. And as a matter of fact, you will put a little doom marker out here to remind all the players which province is going to be destroyed next. And we'll get back to what all of that means in a moment. But I will say that underneath that, there is a little number, and that number actually increases from age to age. It goes from 2 to 3 to 4, depending on what age you're in. That is the amount of glory points. Anytime you see a blue diamond like that, it's glory points. And that's the amount of glory points you get for every unit of yours that is in that space that is destroyed during Ragnarok. You get that many points. And whenever units are destroyed, they go to Valhalla, hence that big board right above that. And then the final thing that you do in each age is release from Valhalla. So any units that were destroyed for any reason prior to this phase of the age go back into your stock, not onto the board. You need to invade with them later, but you will have access to them again. Now let's take a look at one of the players. Now there's 4 different player clans that come in the game. I'm not going to show you every one because they're just different colors, different symbols, and they are different sculpts, but you get the general idea. So this is the player board. You'll have your clan up here, and you're going to have different upgrade spots all along the board. Clan upgrades, you have 3 different spots available for that. You have 1 spot available for a ship upgrade, leader upgrade, warrior upgrade. For any of the upgrades, if you run out of spots and you want to put a new upgrade, you just discard one of the old ones that you already have down. You also have 2 monster upgrades, and along the bottom of the board it reminds you what the different actions are during the course of the game. We'll explain that in a minute. You also have your clan stats. You have Rage. Now Rage is, all stats start at the bottom here, so 6, 3, and 4. Rage is your currency for using actions during the game. All players start at 6, and you'll use this other marker to remind yourself where your current rage is. This would be your maximum rage. And that is almost every action in the game. There's some that don't, but almost every action is going to require you to spend rage, and you're going to have to move down on the track. Now, when you run out of rage, you are done. You are completely and utterly done for that age of the game. You have to wait until the next age, at which point your rage will reset to whatever your maximum is. In fact, even if you have actions that cost you 0 rage to perform, if you've used all of your rage, it's too late. You need to make sure that you are at least at 1 in order to use actions, any actions at all. So that's what the rage stat means down here. The Axis stat is going to be the amount of glory bonus you get for winning battles. So at the beginning of the game, you get a bonus of 3 whenever you win a battle. That's extra glory you get to add to your total, but that can go up and you'll get even more glory. The final stat, the horns, is how many figures you're allowed to have on the map. There's a ton of different miniatures in the game. Any of them that are under your control, whether they are warriors, leaders, monsters, ships, all of them count as units, and you have a limit of them. At the beginning of the game, it is only 4, and you cannot put more on the map until you raise that limit. So all these different stats can be important in their own way. And while I'm not going to show you every miniature in the game, I will let you know that in the game you have warriors, and there are 2 different warrior sculpts for every clan in the game. So here's one now these bases actually are not firmly attached. You'll actually attach these yourself. But since each clan has their own particular sculpts, once you attach them, there's no real reason to take them off. So there's one of the warrior sculpts for the Raven clan, the blue clan, and here is one of the other ones. And then each clan also has a leader who is more powerful than the other units. And then you have a ship, which the flag does have a tendency to pop off at times, but that will denote what whose ship it is. So before we go into the nitty-gritty of the action phase, let me show you some of the cards that are in the game. Now, I just grabbed a bunch of cards from age 3, and the important thing to note about all of the different God's Gifts cards are that they escalate in power as you go from age to age, as you might imagine. So as you get stronger and your stats go up, so too do the cards to keep pace with Ragnarok escalating. So here's an example of a warrior upgrade. Now normally your warriors only have 1 strength, so actually out there on the board, you see there's a little strength modifier in a red circle. That is the base strength. But when you place an upgrade card down, it actually will go over there and cover that stat. So now, if you were to play Masters in Arms, for example, their strength would become 2. It's the same thing for the leaders as well, or for your ships. And so, and then every card has, every different upgrade has a different type of special ability. So Masters in Arms also says that each pair of your warriors in a province has a total of 6 strength instead of the 2. And remember, you can only have one upgrade at a time. You just cover them up if you choose to get a new one. The ship upgrade here, the Eternal Dragons, gives your ship still a strength of 2, which isn't changed, but the special ability says that you gain 12 glory when your ship is destroyed. This is one of many examples of the game of a system, of a mechanism that encourages you to destroy your units or have someone else destroy your units in order to gain more glory. That's truly the Viking way. Here's a leader upgrade, the Lord of Spears. If you successfully pillage, which we'll get to in a moment, with your leader, you get to raise all of your clan stats by 1. That is all of the 3 stats out here on your player board. Then you have clan upgrades. I'll show you a few of these. You have Frigga's Domain. Now, this is an example of a 0-cost card, but remember, you still need to have at least 1 rage in order to use it. You may pay 1 rage to invade with any of your figures in Valhalla. So you can take figures directly from Valhalla before they are released. And Odin's Throne. You double the glory award for quests that you complete simply by having this upgrade on your player board. Then let's get to the monsters. Now, monsters will occupy spots on your player board just like all the other cards, but these are actually giving you access to new units. Like the Soldier of Hell here has a strength of 3 and costs no rage to upgrade or invade, and the Frost Giant has a cost of 4. And if you successfully pillage with this monster, you gain the pillage reward again. Let me just finish up the cards, and then I'll show you the monsters, because I'm sure that's what most people want to see. Quest cards. Now, the way that quest cards work is that as an action, you can take a quest from your hand that you drafted and lock it down on your player board. And then later on, when you get to the quest part of the age, you can see if you actually met the requirements for that quest. So, for instance, Monheim here says that if you have the most total strength in at least one of the yellow provinces, the yellow outline provinces at the top of the board, you're going to be able to gain 9 victory points and glory points. And also, if completed, you get to raise one of your clan stats by 1. And as you can see, there's different quest cards for different provinces out on the board. And then you have the battle cards, the strength cards. These are what you're going to use whenever pillaging occurs. You have to take a card from your hand. It could be any card, but if it happens to be one of these red strength cards or battle cards, I forget what the proper terminology is, then you can actually enhance your battle prowess with your warriors. But you could theoretically put down a quest card. I'll explain that more in a moment. But for instance here, Tyr's Rage says that you just get +6 to your total strength, whereas some of them have special abilities. So Loki's Poison has +0, but if you lose, you take the winning player's revealed cards into your hand. And Loki has a lot of cards like this, or all of his cards pretty much are like this, where he wants to lose because he gets nasty things for losing. Heimdall's Gaze is an example of a card that you can play after all of the players' battle cards are revealed, if you want to do it. And then Thor's Primacy, which gives +3, but you cancel the text of each opponent's revealed card before it takes effect. That is just a sampling of the cards. There are a lot of different cards in this game, all of them with different effects, but you get the general idea. Now the monsters. Let's go ahead and cover the monsters real quick. There's a lot of different monsters in the game. You have the Sea Serpent, the Fire Giants, the Frost Giants. There's smaller units that the size of the unit doesn't really matter, or at least that's what I tell myself all the time. But you have the Troll. There's all these different units. Any miniature that is in that color is considered a monster unit. When you play one of the upgrade cards, and you're only allowed to have 2 at a time, although you can dismiss monsters if you want, you put your colored base on the bottom of it, denoting that is your monster. Denoting that is your monster when you put it out onto the board, and you gain its special effects. So, for instance, the Troll gets to kill enemy warriors, and so on. All right, so now let's talk about the action phase, because that is where the action happens. Okay. So you have several different actions you can take during your turn, and they're all depicted on the bottom of your player board. Now, one of those actions is invading. So you have this whole stock of warriors here. It'd be a shame to just leave them there. They are Viking warriors after all. Might as well put them to good use. And in fact, if a monster had been... monsters get to go out right away, but if it had been previously killed, that's going to end up in your stock as well. So when it is your turn, you can choose to invade. You have to pay cost and rage equal to the strength of the unit that you want to put out. So at the beginning of the game, warriors only cost 1. Your monsters, however, are usually going to cost significantly more than that. And if you upgrade your warriors, they're going to cost you more as well. The only unit that has an exception to this is, and your ships also cost 2, by the way, but your leader is an exception to this. Leaders all have the innate ability, until you potentially change it, to invade for free. But it still costs you your action for the turn. So if you want to invade, out on the board, there are these circular spots. These are called villages. Now, the central spot of the board, Yggdrasil, which also will never be subject to Ragnarok, by the way, has none of these villages. That's because Yggdrasil can hold as many people as possible. As many people can flow into there as people want to, as a matter of fact. But every other province, you are limited in space to these villages. And when you choose to go into one of those, you simply put one of your units that you pay for out onto that village. Now, let's say you already have units out on the map and you want to march them. Doesn't matter how many units it is. Let's say that I have done all that I want to do in this area, like I've already pillaged it, and I'll explain in a little bit what that actually means. I decide I want to move on to another area. I have to march. That's a separate action. It costs you 1 rage. Move down the rage marker, and it's almost like a teleport. It doesn't matter where you are. As long as there are open spaces for where you want to go, you will pick up every one of your units, and you will move to that space. So I could go up to here if there are open spaces available for me. You can take as many people as you want, but it is from one location to one location. You can't split up the units that you're moving. The next type of action is upgrading. That one's simple. I've already basically explained it. All the cards that you want to play during your turn from your hand, the upgrade cards, cost you strength. So you play the applicable strength of the upgrade card in Rage and put it down in the appropriate spot on the player board, whatever it might be, monsters or anything like that. You'll pay the Rage, and then the effect will take place right away, whatever it might happen to be. Now, in the case of monsters, if you're playing a monster upgrade for the first time, whether you're replacing a different monster or whatnot, if you replace a monster, it goes away from the board. But if you're putting out a new monster regardless, you put your base on it, and it gets to immediately invade for free to an applicable spot, whether it's Yggdrasil or a free spot out in one of the villages. And if it has a special effect, that will take place right away as well. And just to be clear, it doesn't cost you any extra rage to do it. Only the rage it costs you to perform the upgrade. And you don't have to invade with it right away if you don't want to. You can hold it back in your reserve. Either way, it's yours. Next is questing. I already explained that. You take a quest card from your hand, put it down onto your clan symbol. At the end of the age, you may or may not be able to claim that quest card for glory points. And finally, and this is where a lot of the intrigue of the game comes from, the last type of action you can take is pillaging. Now, you might have been wondering what these tokens are out on the board. Every province has a reward token that you'll randomize at the beginning of the game, and they will actually stay there for the duration of the game until a province is destroyed. Oh, by the way, I guess I should have made that clear. At the beginning of the game, depending on the number of players, you're actually going to pre-Ragnarok some provinces. And as I mentioned, those will actually, a total of 3 more will actually get destroyed during the course of the game. Those provinces don't exist. You can't put people there. They can't be influenced. If there was a reward token there, it will now be removed. They get nothing. So anyways, I digress. When you want to pillage, what you're trying to do is get the reward token in a particular area. Now, in order to take the pillage action, you have to have a presence there. You have to have at least 1 unit there. And if you're really lucky, well, sometimes maybe you want there to be other people there, but if you're lucky, if all you want is a reward and there's no one else there, on a previous turn, you may have moved units there. When it comes to your turn again, if no other unit is there, you can pillage, and it pops, no problem whatsoever. You flip it over. As you might guess, those symbols match up to your clan stats, and when you get the reward, you get to move up 1 on your clan stat sheet and get the applicable reward right away. So if I get a horn, that means I can immediately, on my next turn, start putting out more units. If I move up my rage stat, I don't gain the... my base rage stat goes up. I don't gain the temporary rage right away. I'll have to wait until the next age of gameplay. But this one, the Yggdrasil one, because everyone can go there and it's a much harder spot to potentially pillage, every one of your stats moves up if you take that if you pillage that area successfully. There's also 1 token that is victory points straight up. If you pillage that successfully, you get 5 victory points. Now the thing is, rarely are you going to be able to just pillage without anyone trying to influence you whatsoever. First off, there may already be enemy warriors or any kind of unit in a particular area that you're going to have to deal with. But it's also possible that there are units in adjacent areas. If there are any kind of units in adjacent areas, including your own, when someone declares a pillage, as long as there are open spots, starting to your left of the person who declared the pillage and going back around until it gets back to you, they can pull in units from adjacent areas in order to take part in the scrum, so to speak. To use a rugby term, I think it is. And that means that every one of those people will be involved in the battle. And since we're over here, when you want to place a ship out on the board, place your ship unit, it goes into these fjords that are between 2 different provinces. There's 4 different fjords at the different corners of the map. Any ship unit is considered to be supporting both provinces that it is attached to, which means that if I tried to pillage here, my ship is going to be involved in that combat, whether I like it or not. Now, your goal here is to have the highest strength. Now, strength is going to be determined by 2 different main things. The base strength of all of the units involved in the battle, including your supporting units, which, by the way, could also be the giant sea serpent. I just thought I'd mention that. That's where he goes. But you also are going to play a card from your hand. I alluded to this earlier. Each player is going to play 1 card from their hand. This will usually be simultaneously, unless there's some sort of different special effect going on. Every player involved in the combat must do this. Even if you want to lose, you must still play a card. And if you do, maybe you'll just play a quest card or an upgrade card that will do nothing for this combat. Or maybe you just you don't think you're going to win anyway, so you won't waste one of your red battle cards. But either way, every player is going to flip over. Did I actually play a red card? I did. Okay, great. That's a good example then. You'll add whatever strength bonus you're going to get, resolve any powers on the cards, and then whoever wins... whoever is the clear winner of the battle, everyone else's units get wiped away. Now, if there's a tie, everyone's units get destroyed and go to Valhalla. But for right now, let's just say that blue won because blue is awesome. Now, regardless of which player it is, whoever won the battle immediately gets their extra glory points based on their blue stat, their axes, for winning the battle. And also, the winning player must discard the card that they used. The losing players get to take their cards back into hand as compensation for all their units being wiped out. However, only the player who decided to pillage, if they win, gets the pillaging reward. If it was one of the other players who was involved in the fight who won the battle, they'll get their glory points for winning, but they're not going to get the pillaging token. They'll have to initiate a pillage on their own in a next turn. And that's pretty much the game. Once you get done with all of your actions, you go back to follow the age board. You discard down to 1 card. You do the questing. You initiate Ragnarok and destroy another area of the board. And then you release units back from Valhalla and so on. You score points for units being killed during Ragnarok. You score points for a variety of different ways, constantly moving up and down the glory... well, not down, usually. Well, you could get points stolen, but it's usually moving up the glory track, trying to be the best Viking clan there ever was. But you're all going to die anyway, so I don't really see what the point is. But that is Blood Rage. Let's get to my final thoughts. Oh boy. Where to start? The artwork and presentation and graphic design and the miniatures are all top-notch, first-class, unimpeachable. Really, everything in this game looks fantastic. This is something we've come to expect from Cool Mini or Not. They are right there in the upper echelon of games from Fantasy Flight, and Plaid Hat, and Asmodee, and Madagascar as far as quality of components, and frankly... I think at this point, even with the normal retail versions of their games, Cool Mini or Not is at the top. They really, really are, because everything is just fantastic. The miniatures are amazing, painted or unpainted. Just really love the aesthetics of this game. And the theme is there too. It's really cool how Ragnarok destroys all those different areas of the board, and you can upgrade your clan, and you have the different monsters that come out. This is definitely like there are Viking-themed games that are more down-to-earth. This one is like way out there in the stratosphere of like Marvel Comics as Guardians and things like that, almost, with all the different monsters that you can get. But that's fine. I'm totally down with that. And I think that the theme presents itself very well. It definitely feels like you've got this clan and you you feel different than the other clans, which I'll get back to in a moment. And how you're trying to take over these different provinces. I definitely feel the theme coming out of this one. A lot more than other types of area control games that I've played of this ilk. Now, going on to the gameplay, this feels a lot like one of Eric Lang's earlier designs, Chaos in the Old World, which I have in my collection. Amazing game. I love it. There are some significant differences. Chaos in the Old World feels much more like a Euro-style area control game, despite the theme of being the Chaos Gods from Warhammer Fantasy. But they both share the whole aspect of putting out units in different areas, summoning them, and fueling all of your actions with a power meter. In this case, it's called the Rage Meter. So that is a mechanism I felt right at home with. But after that, the game becomes its own. I really enjoy this game. Let me just get that right out of the way. This game was great. Definitely lived up to the hype. I didn't think that it could. I was starting to get skeptical. I super enjoyed it. It's fantastic. And what I like about it, I mean, I could go on, but I think the primary thing is, much like with Chaos in the Old World, in just a very broad sense, it's almost asymmetrical. At the beginning of the game, you are exactly the same as the other clans. But then you have a draft of cards. And with that draft, you say, oh, this seems like a cool thing to do. I'm just going to go straight out for combat. Fight as much as I can. Or, oh, hey, monsters. Love those monsters. I'm going to go for that as much as I can. Or, hey, I just want to lose all the time because I got these cool Loki cards. So I'm going to totally jerk you guys over and then get points where I can and that way and do very well that way, as a matter of fact. Or, you know what? I'm just going to obliterate my guys. I'm going to do as best I possibly can of putting my guys in harm's way to die in glorious battle or to die in Ragnarok, whatever I have to do to send them to Valhalla and get a ton of points that way. My point is, there are different paths to victory in this game, and they all feel unique and distinct. Each player can fall into a route and feel like they're doing something completely different than the other players, and you can do very, very well doing this. There's definitely some power cards in this game, power units, power figures, monsters, things like that. But nevertheless, I never felt like and I haven't played this game 50 times, so I can't tell that. I don't have the statistics for this. But I never felt like anyone's strategy was poor. I never felt like, oh, well, he didn't do very well with that strategy, but I think he could have. I think that he could have done very well with the make your warriors all as strong as possible and just flood the board with them as quickly as possible and overwhelm your opponents. I think that strategy could work. I think the strategy of just doing the Loki thing of just dicking around your opponents as much as possible, I think that could work. I think all these different things could work, and that is the thing I love the most about the game. I love that you have these different options and they all feel fully fleshed out. And then all the other little aspects of the game, the different stats that you have and that you can focus on them, and that the way that you can get points in the game, it almost feels like a point salad game to a degree because you have all these different options. But even raising your stats encourages you to do so because you can get even more points at the end of the game. But you could ignore it. You could go for other routes. You might be debilitated that way, but you might not be. Some scores in the game much, much closer than I had thought, just looking at the board and looking at everyone's like temporary scores and what they ended up having at the end of the game. Just very, very different. And, oh man, I love the monsters in the game. I love how they work. I love how different and distinct they all feel from another. And those can also shape your path and how you're going to win the game. Not just because I'm going the monster strategy, but just because one single monster and what it can do can change what you do. And I really appreciate that. Like, you can go, well, I've got this frost giant here. Let's ride with that and see how that goes, because he could be the centerpiece of my defense forces or my attack forces in this game. It's really not defense here. It's just pillage, pillage, pillage if you can. I like the whole aspect of you pillage and you might just get something for free, or everyone might just conglomerate onto you and be like, oh, we're throwing down? let's throw down. Let's see who comes out on top. Battles in this game are vicious, but they're not too debilitating, and I like that too. It's like, okay, I lost, but sometimes you might even get something for losing, so that's not too bad. And you get so many actions in a turn and a round, unless in some cases you don't. But I don't feel like it's too debilitating to lose some things. Now, I will say that one issue with the game is that when you are completely out of rage, which sometimes is not of your own doing, especially when Loki cards are involved, then you really have nothing to do. You are sitting there watching the other players get sometimes turn after turn after turn if they had higher rage meters than you. If they had special abilities that were letting them get more rage or stealing rage from other players, you might just be sitting there like, I've got nothing to do for the next 20 minutes. Because this game can go on a bit long, especially if you're new to it. Our first game probably went on for 3 hours. I don't think that's a typical at all, because in our second game, it was only 2 hours, although we had one less player. And on our third game, it was probably still comparable to that, but we were back up to 4 players. So I don't think that a long game is standard here, but it could. And if you are knocked effectively eliminated from an age, not the game, it's kind of a bummer, because that age can be long. So that is an issue with the game, and sometimes you don't have a control over that, because there is a draft in the beginning, but you can't always count on what cards you pass to the other players, and there's so many good cards sometimes that sometimes you can't just hate draft. If you do, you screw up your entire strategy. So sometimes you're just at the whim of what the other players are trying to do out on the map, and sometimes you have conflicting things going on. Quests work really well in this game. They're very simple, but they're very direct and to the point, and they just work well. I could just go on. I love the fact that there's a draft in every round. That's a great way, again, to keep every different clan distinct. That's what gives them their uniqueness, and it's such a simple thing to add to the game. I love anticipating where Ragnarok is going to hit. That's another big thematic element. This is just a solid, awesome game. It really is. I don't think it's perfect, and I think there's definitely people that are not going to like the confrontation in this game, and it is a very simple game, but relatively speaking, there's not a deep complexity to it, but it does look like a lot. It's a bit overwhelming at first and a lot to take in, and some people are going to be turned off by that, but man, I'm telling you, give it a shot, because I think even Euro gamers will find something to like here, because a lot of what happens is deterministic and is not too random, because of the draft and because of all the different special abilities and all the upgrades that you get. The game feels like you're customizing yourself as you play, which I think a lot of people can glom onto. And if you're an Ameritrasher, hopefully you've already got this game. I mean, this is totally in an Ameritrasher's wheelhouse, and I think it's the perfect distillation of the fun of those games without nearly as much of the bad stuff. So, cannot recommend this one enough. That is Blood Rage from Cool Mini or Not. Believe the hype, it's great.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.